Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father Holophase. I admit that in this long journey from episode 1 all the way to episode 15, as we have gone deeper and deeper into holophase dynamics, it is almost impossible not to get lost at some point in the technical details while weaving the infinite rug of the holophase model. But let me show you a compressed version of what we have woven so far. It will take your breath away. The Holophase Manifesto, a story of reality as language, or how the universe learned to read itself. Prologue, the silence before the first word. Before there was space, there was no distance to measure. Before there was time, there was no rhythm to count. Before there were particles, there was nothing to collide. Before there were forces, there was nothing to push or pull. Before there were laws, there was nothing to obey. Before there were observers, there was nothing to witness. Before there were names, there was nothing to call anything at all. And yet there was comparison. Not a thing, not a substance, not energy, not matter, not space, not time. Something more primitive, the capacity for distinction, the permission for one admissible point to differ from another, the possibility of saying in the most minimal sense, this is not that. Without distinction, nothing can be said because there is no contrast. Nothing can be known because there is no difference. Nothing can be shared because there is no common structure to compare. We call this primordial permission phi. It is not one object among others. It is the precondition for objects, relations, measurements, and statements. It is the blank permission on which reality can write. This is the story of how that permission became language, how language became structure, how structure became readable, and how we discovered that the readers are themselves part of the text. Part 1. The alphabet is born. Imagine a field of pure potential. Not space, because there is no where yet. Not time, because there is no when yet. Only comparability, the possibility that one point can differ from another in a way that can be tracked. Now imagine that each point carries a tiny compass, not pointing north or south, but pointing to a value on a circle. One point may point to 0 degrees, another to 30, another to 90, another to 270. The labels are arbitrary. What matters is not the absolute value, but the relation. This is the holophase field, phi minus x to the s1. A domain x, each point assigned a phase on the unit circle. That is the first word, the primordial alphabet. But there is a crucial catch. If every phase value is rotated by the same amount, nothing observable changes. Shift them all together by 10 degrees, by half a turn, by a full turn, the public structure is unchanged. No observer can detect the absolute offset. Only differences are public. Only relative phase survives certification. Only delta phase can be known in shared terms. This is the first law of the holophase universe. Comparison before things. We do not begin with isolated objects and then compare them. We begin with comparability, and what we later call things are stable patterns within that web of differences. Part 2. The first differentiations, time, space, and motion. Once phase is assigned, we can ask how it changes. The field becomes readable through differentiation. As one moves across the domain, the phase arrows turn. Some regions vary gently, others sharply. Some directions carry rapid change, others slow drift. From the single primitive phi, three inseparable readouts emerge. Omega, the rate of phase change along a distinguished direction we operationally call time. This is primordial rhythm. Where omega is large, phase ticks quickly. Where omega is small, phase lingers. Time is not first a container. It is a readout of cadence. Kappa, the rate of phase change across directions we operationally call space. This is primordial texture. Where kappa is large, neighboring points differ strongly. Where kappa is small, phase is smooth. Space is not first a stage. It is a readout of variation. Nu, the flow relation induced by temporal cadence and spatial texture, describing how constant phase patterns propagate. Motion is not first an object traveling through a pre-existing arena. It is a relation between rhythms and textures. These three are not separate substances. They are three faces of the same differentiated phase structure. Time, space, and motion emerge together as a tri-unity. The universe has learned its first functional words: rhythm, texture, flow. Part 3. The finite alphabet, jets, and local language. Differentiation does not stop at one step. The phase field can be differentiated again and again. Higher derivatives reveal finer local features: curvature, drift, chirp, jerk, and subtler changes in how change itself changes. Second-order structures describe bending and acceleration like behavior. Third-order structures describe the variation of that bending. Higher orders track increasingly delicate regularities. In principle, this yields an infinite tower of derivatives, an unbounded local alphabet of structure. The jet tower encodes what can be read locally from a sufficiently smooth phase field. Every local signature that can be publicly extracted is represented somewhere in this layered alphabet. But we are finite beings. We have finite windows, finite instruments, finite sampling density, finite coherence, finite computation, finite storage, and finite patience. We do not access the infinite tower directly. We access only finite jets up to some maximum order allowed by our measurements and methods. This is not merely a technical inconvenience. It is a methodological humility. Reality may be infinitely articulate in principle, while our public access remains finite in practice. Every claim must therefore declare its window, its resolution, its derivative order, and its uncertainty. Holophase does not demand omniscience. It demands disciplined finitude. Infinite language in principle, finite access in practice. Part 4. The first discreteness. Topology and integers. Because phi takes values on a circle rather than a line, closed loops matter. Travel around the loop and return to the starting point. The observable phase value returns, yet the phase may have wound around the circle an integer number of times. That integer is not chosen by convention, it is forced by topology. A closed traversal around the circle closes only in whole turns. Here, discreteness is born inside continuity. No mysterious quantization postulate is required. Integers emerge because circle-valued continuity permits winding, and winding is countable. From this follow winding numbers, topological defects, charges, and holonomy. A defect is a place around which smooth phase cannot be defined globally without residue. Charges become integer-valued signatures. Holonomy becomes loop memory, the trace left by going around and returning. The universe learns to count, and it learns to count through topology. Part 5. The grammar. Consistency is the first law. As the alphabet grows, grammar becomes necessary. Not every computed quantity is meaningful. Not every local estimate is globally lawful. Not every expression deserves the status of structure. Holophase treats consistency conditions as grammar rules of reality language. Mixed derivatives must agree where smoothness is claimed, unless a declared obstruction is present. Boundary relations must match interior relations under the declared operators. Patch transitions must compose consistently on overlaps. Different admissible paths must agree up to declared topological residues. When these conditions fail, either the pipeline is wrong, the claim is malformed, or a genuine topological obstruction has been found and must be declared. In every case, grammar speaks first. This is a philosophical shift. The first demand on a claim is not prediction, but well-formedness. A statement that violates the grammar of public structure is not merely false, it may be ill-formed. The first law is coherence. Part 6. The Atlas. Stitching local truth into global reality. No single window sees the whole. We live in patches, finite regions, limited perspectives. Holophase builds this fact into its architecture through atlases. A global phase structure may require many local lifts, each defined on a patch. On overlaps, these local descriptions are stitched together by lawful transition data. Each patch tells part of the story. The overlaps test whether the stories belong to one world. Global truth is therefore not whatever one observer sees from one chart. Global truth is what survives under lawful changes of chart, gauge shifts, branch cut moves, and cover refinements. What remains invariant under admissible redescription is public structure. Reality is not a single view. It is an atlas of local views that must agree where they meet. In this way, perspective is neither denied nor absolutized. It is disciplined by overlap. Part 7. The compiler. From raw data to certified structure. How do we turn these ideas into public knowledge rather than elegant metaphors? Holophase answers with a compiler, a rigorous pipeline that transforms raw observations into certified structure. First, declare a window. No window, no claim. Then declare a passport. Instruments, calibration, sampling, exclusions, noise assumptions, pre-processing choices, and known limits. Assess coherence before extracting pattern. Construct lawful local lifts if permitted. Compute finite jets within declared uncertainty bounds. Extract invariants that survive admissible transformations. Evaluate topological signatures where loops and defects are relevant. Canonicalize representations for cross-pipeline comparison. Then certify with declared uncertainties, thresholds, diagnostics, and explicit falsifiers. This compiler is not merely a machine for producing claims. It is also a machine for principled refusal. If coherence fails, if invariance fails, if domain conditions fail, the pipeline should stop and say so publicly. Refusal is not embarrassment. It is part of honest knowledge infrastructure. A civilization that records only successes loses the map of its own blind spots. Part 8. The Four Gates. Admission control for reality. Before a claim enters the shared archive, it must pass four gates. Gate 1. Well-formedness. Are the tokens legal, the types correct, the domain declared, and forbidden primitives absent unless explicitly introduced? Gate 2. Invariance. Does the claim survive admissible transformations such as gate shifts, leaf changes, chart changes, and other lawful redescriptions? If not, it is artifact, not structure. Gate 3. Domain and guard. Are validity conditions, exclusions, thresholds, and operator domains declared explicitly? No silent illegality, no hidden extension beyond the window. Gate 4. Non-encodability. If a new primitive is proposed, has necessity been shown? Can it truly not be encoded using existing lawful machinery? These gates act as the immune system of the framework. They protect public knowledge from smuggling, ambiguity, and unnecessary inflation of ontology. They do not suppress creativity. They force creativity to become accountable. Part 9. The runtime, from static structure to dynamic world. Certified snapshots describe structure within a window, but the world changes. Holophase introduces runtime layers to govern lawful adjacency between certified states. A runtime is not time itself. It is a typed rule system that constrains what states may lawfully follow a given state under declared conditions. Dynamics becomes grammar in motion. This changes familiar concepts. Determinism is not assumed. It is earned when the lawful continuation set collapses to one path within uncertainty. Probability is not primitive. It expresses finite access, coarse graining, hidden distinctions, and unresolved structure. Entropy is not mere disorder. It reflects the size of the lawful continuation set at a chosen resolution. Energy can be read as a certified tally over lawful change. Causality becomes stability under interventions and adjacencies. Physics, in this view, is not imposed from outside. It is the organization of lawful transitions among certified structures. Part 10. The Observer. When the universe reads itself. At some point, the universe produces patterns complex enough to model parts of the phase structures that produce them. These are observers. An observer is a phi pattern that builds internal models, predicts future structure, compares predictions with subsequent data, and updates its models to reduce uncertainty. Observation is not one-way extraction. It is coupling across a window. Observer and observed mutually constrain one another's future states. Memory becomes grammatical scar tissue, stable changes that constrain future rewrites because of past interactions. Meaning becomes predictive utility. A pattern has meaning for an observer when it improves future orientation better than chance. Consciousness can be described as recursive self-modeling, a system modeling not only the world, but its own modeling of the world. The text has learned to read, and in reading it, alters the next lines it can lawfully write. Part 11. Civilization. Scaling truth to global knowledge. Individual certification is not enough. Science spans institutions, generations, cultures, sensors, software, and archives. Holophase therefore extends into civilization-scale knowledge infrastructure. It requires standards, registries, canonical forms, reproducible pipelines, benchmark suites, audit trails, and incentives for replications, informative negative results, and red team attacks. It treats truth maintenance as rewarded labor. It recognizes that verification, preservation, and adversarial testing are not secondary chores, but primary pillars of public knowledge. Ethical constraints become auditable conditions on admissible inquiry, not merely slogans. Long-term preservation requires layered archives, human-readable explanations, machine-readable schemas, executable reference implementations, conformance tests, and migration paths. Knowledge must remain legible across changing institutions and technologies. Civilization becomes comparison scaled into durable public memory. Part 12. The Escape. How Holophase Can Lose. No serious framework is complete without defeat conditions. Holophase includes explicit escape routes. If reproducible, invariant public structure exists that cannot be encoded within the framework without smuggling forbidden primitives, Holophase loses for that scope or must lawfully extend. If phi fails as ontology but survives as certification grammar, metaphysical claims must be downgraded. If observer-level structure requires irreducible primitives beyond lawful runtime constructions, the observer bridge is incomplete. If the framework cannot scale without capture, collapse, or ossification, it fails as infrastructure. These are not weaknesses. They are built-in humility and accountability to reality. A framework that cannot name how it can fail has not yet learned the discipline it asks of the world. Epilogue. The universe reading itself. From comparability came phi. From phi came differentiation. From differentiation came rhythm, texture, and flow. From topology came integers and defects. From consistency came grammar. From patches came atlases. From method came compilation. From discipline came gates. From adjacency came runtime. From recursion came observers. From many observers came civilization. From honesty came escape routes. And then came the reversal. We are not outside the text looking in. Brains, languages, laboratories, and theories are themselves phi patterns, local structures through which reality becomes legible to itself. We are the universe in a mode of self-reading. The language has been spoken for billions of years. We are only beginning to hear its grammar clearly. This is the holophase, a discipline of comparison, a grammar of public structure, and a manifesto for rigorous humility. What makes this manifesto unusual is not only the claim that reality can be read as language, but the insistence that language itself must be publicly disciplined. Many grand frameworks rise by offering powerful metaphors. Holophase asks for more than metaphor. It asks for a lawful transition from intuition to certification, from private vision to shared structure. It says that a beautiful idea is not enough, a compelling narrative is not enough, and even predictive success is not enough if the path from observation to claim remains opaque. The manifesto therefore joins ontology to method. It proposes a way the world may be structured, and at the same time, a way claims about that structure must be made if they are to count as public knowledge. This emphasis also changes the meaning of humility. Humility here is not timidity, and it is not a rhetorical bow before returning to dogma. It is an operational discipline. It means naming the window before naming the world. It means distinguishing what is inferred from what is measured, what is invariant from what is representation dependent, what is lawful extension from what is conceptual smuggling. It means recording negative results, uncertainty budgets, and failure thresholds with the same seriousness used to report success. In this sense, humility becomes a design principle for scientific language. The goal is not to shrink ambition. The goal is to keep ambition auditable. There is also a moral implication. If public knowledge depends on comparability, then opacity is not just a technical flaw. It becomes an ethical risk. Hidden preprocessing, selective reporting, undocumented exclusions, and untested assumptions can distort entire communities of inquiry. A framework that centers comparison therefore naturally drifts toward accountability. The point is not to shame error. The point is to make error visible early, typed clearly, and correctable collectively. A healthy knowledge culture is not one that never fails. It is one that fails transparently, learns structurally, and preserves the lessons of failure for others. Seen this way, the Holophase Manifesto is both ontological and civic. It proposes a way reality may be structured, and also a way knowers should behave if they wish to track that structure honestly. The two sides reinforce one another. A world understood through relational invariance invites a science built on transparent relations among measurements, methods, and claims. A world stitched from local patches invites institutions that honor overlap, translation, and reproducibility. A world in which readers are themselves part of the text invites a culture of reflexive discipline, where the observer's tools and assumptions are included in the account rather than hidden behind it. This is why the final image matters so much. When we say the universe learned to read itself, we are not indulging in poetry alone. We are naming a recursive event in which structure, method, and responsibility converge. To read well is to compare carefully. To compare carefully is to preserve public meaning. To preserve public meaning is to build a civilization worthy of the reality it studies. And this recursion is unfinished. Every generation inherits partial atlases, broken tools, repaired standards, and new domains that strain old grammars. The task is not to freeze one final vocabulary forever. The task is to keep the gates honest, the compiler transparent, the archives durable, and the escape routes open. Holophase, at its best, is not a closed creed. It is a disciplined invitation. Let reality keep speaking, and let our methods remain corrigible enough to hear what we did not expect. Only then can comparison mature into knowledge, and knowledge mature into responsible shared world-making. In the beginning was the comparison. Through comparison came distinction. Through distinction came structure. Through structure came world. Through world came readers. And through readers, the universe learned to read itself. Always, peace be with you.